There is something profoundly strange about modern life. We live surrounded by conveniences, by technologies that promise to make everything easier. And yet, we feel a void that no achievement seems to fill. As if, with every step toward comfort, we were drifting further from something essential, meaning. Carl Jung once said that the soul is not satisfied with what is merely convenient. It seeks depth, and excessive comfort, paradoxically, keeps us on the surface. Modern life has separated the path from the reward. We want results without the journey, pleasure without effort, peace without confrontation. But the self, that deeper, wiser presence within us, only awakens when we are called into creative discomfort, when something forces us out of numbness. And so the question arises, what does it truly mean to live well? Has our constant pursuit of safety made us incapable of dealing with the broader meaning of existence? Today I want to guide you through a reflection that unites psychoanalysis, philosophy, and neuroscience to understand why the most comfortable path is often the most empty. If this journey resonates with you, leave a comment and share it. This is the beginning of the crossing. Chapter 1. The separation between quest and reward, the collapse of the journey. We live in a time when the journey has lost its symbolic value. For centuries, humankind understood that life was a path, full of highs and lows, labyrinths and crossings. Meaning was not only found in the arrival, but in the process itself, in silent effort, in the lessons hidden within every stumble. Today, however, we've been trained to believe that value lies only in the final result, and in that conditioning, something essential has been lost. The soul stopped walking. Depth psychology shows us that the self, the organizing center of the psyche, does not reveal itself all at once. It is formed as we move through experiences, challenges, and frustrations. The unconscious, as Jung said, speaks in symbols, and every quest is in fact a living metaphor for individuation, the process of becoming who we are. By separating quest and reward, modernity broke that symbolic bridge. We want instant gratification, quick pleasure, success without effort. We want to reap without sowing, love without unveiling ourselves, understand without being silent. Neuroscience confirms what Jung intuited. The brain's dopaminergic system is designed to respond to the anticipation of reward, not the reward itself. In other words, it's the journey, the movement towards something, that lights the inner fire of purpose. When we eliminate the quest, we also eliminate the deep pleasure of growth. We become dependent on small doses of stimuli that don't build meaning, only distract from the emptiness. Philosophy, too, recognizes this paradox. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." Without that why, without an inner cause that gives meaning to the journey, the human being fragments, loses direction, and seeks refuge in illusions of well-being. A comfortable life without challenges becomes a desert disguised as paradise. Yet there is a silent truth that begins to emerge when we look honestly at this collapse. The discomfort we avoid is the very thing that could reveal us. By rejecting effort, we reject the symbolic birth of the self. Reward without the journey is like a seed that never breaks its shell. And perhaps the first step toward rediscovering meaning is remembering that to live is essentially to cross. Chapter 2. The psychology of discomfort, the role of frustration in the formation of the soul. Discomfort is a silent teacher. No one seeks it out, yet everyone at some point is visited by it. The human soul matures not when everything goes right, but when something forces us to confront what is uncomfortable, limited, imperfect, both within and around us. Jung stated, "What you resist persists." The more we flee from discomfort, the more it disguises itself, finding subtle ways to call us back to our center. Frustration in this context is not a failure of existence. It is an invitation to transformation. It compels us to abandon the illusion of control and to recognize that growth is always a process of disintegration and reconstruction. From a psychological standpoint, frustration has a sacred role. It dissolves the idealizations of the ego, that part of us that craves comfort, approval, and certainty, to make space for the self which seeks authenticity and wholeness. It is when the ego is wounded that the unconscious has a chance to speak. The pain we feel when losing a job, facing rejection, or failing in a project is often the beginning of a deep dialogue with what is most true within us. Neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. The brain remodels itself in response to effort and discomfort. Neural plasticity, the brain's ability to transform, occurs mainly when there is resistance, when something challenges us. Immediate pleasure relaxes, but does not build. Conscious effort, though painful, creates new connections, new possibilities, new meanings. We live in a culture that pathologizes frustration as if it were a sign of weakness, but Jung would say that it is precisely there that the soul gains symbolic depth. Every moment of discomfort contains a seed of revelation. Those who can endure the tension between what is and what they wish it to be find the point of transformation. Suffering that is not repressed but listened to becomes wisdom. So when you feel that life is frustrating you, breathe. Ask yourself, what part of me is being called to grow? Discomfort is not the opposite of meaning. It is its gateway. And only those who cross it discover the power of being whole. Chapter 3. The Shadow of Instant Gratification, Dopamine, Emptiness, and the Digital Age. Never before have we had so much access to pleasure, and never have we been so exhausted. We are immersed in a culture of constant stimulation, notifications, likes, shows, shopping, distractions, all promising to relieve boredom and offer instant happiness. But the more we chase quick pleasure, the deeper the emptiness becomes. The soul seems to cry out for something that cannot be found on the surface of screens. Dopamine, that neurotransmitter of motivation, has become the invisible symbol of modernity. It drives us toward reward, but when activated without purpose, merely by habit, it creates a vicious cycle, momentary pleasure followed by depletion. Neuroscience calls this dopamine fatigue. The brain loses sensitivity to reward, requiring ever greater stimulation to feel the same pleasure. It is the chemical collapse of meaning. Jung might say that what we call addiction is often an unconscious attempt to avoid encountering the void, and digital culture has amplified this collective escape mechanism. We spend hours before screens trying to fill the silence. But silence is precisely what connects us to the self. By eliminating boredom, we also eliminate the soil where meaning grows. Philosophically, we are living through a kind of crisis of presence. We are everywhere, and yet not within ourselves. Instant gratification fragments inner time, preventing the maturation of experience. Everything becomes transient, disposable, replaceable. And when everything is easy, nothing is deep. Comfortable life has turned into collective anesthesia, but the emptiness we feel is not an error. It is the soul's call. It reminds us that pleasure without consciousness is mere escape. True contentment arises only when pleasure serves purpose. Perhaps the invitation of this era is to slow down, to relearn how to wait, to savor process, to allow silence. Dopamine must once again ally itself with meaning, not distraction. When pleasure reconnects with presence, emptiness gives way to fullness, and what once was noise becomes prayer. Chapter 4. The Archetype of the Hero and the Symbolic Value of the Journey. Within every human being lives a sleeping hero. Not the hero of epic tales who conquers external monsters, but the one who dares to face the abysses of the soul. Carl Jung saw in the hero archetype one of the most powerful expressions of individuation, the process through which the ego opens to the self, crossing its own shadows and finally finding the center. Modern life, obsessed with comfort and predictability, has erased the meaning of this crossing. We have been conditioned to avoid risk, to fear mistakes, to always choose the shortest path. But in doing so, we lose the symbolic territory where the soul grows, the territory of challenge. The hero in every mythology is not the one who seeks comfort, but the one who hears the call and departs, even in fear. Fear, in fact, is the sign that the portal stands before us. Jung said, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." That phrase captures the essence of the inner journey. The shadow, all that we deny in ourselves, all we repress or avoid, holds the vital energy the ego has learned to fear. To face it is the true heroic act. It is not about eliminating fear or discomfort, but using them as a compass. With every step into the unknown, the hero becomes more conscious, more whole, more real. Symbolically, every process of self-knowledge is a death and a rebirth. The ego dies in its certainties so the self can be born in authenticity. So it was for the mythic heroes, from Perseus to Moses, from Ulysses to Christ, all had to cross the desert, resist the temptation of the easy path, and endure silence before revelation. The journey, therefore, is the rite that transforms the ordinary person into awakened consciousness. Depth psychology reminds us that life does not demand perfection. It demands wholeness. Wholeness is born when we stop fleeing from pain and learn to listen to it as a message. Discomfort, doubt, and conflict, all are stages in the journey of the inner hero. When life challenges you, remember, it is not punishment, but initiation. Difficulty is the morning dew of the soul. It is the symbol that something greater is trying to emerge. The true hero does not seek the end of the journey, but the meaning of every step, because it is in the walking itself, not the arrival, that the soul finds its gold. Chapter 5. The Philosophy of Meaning. Nietzsche, Jung, and Creative Effort. In a world that tirelessly seeks to eliminate suffering, we forget that it is precisely through suffering that meaning is born. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And that why is not an external goal. It is an inner force, a silent flame that gives coherence to existence. Carl Jung, decades later, expanded this view, affirming that the human soul needs a symbolic purpose, something that transcends the ego and connects individual life to the greater flow of the collective unconscious. Creative effort is the manifestation of that force, not mechanical effort driven by guilt or ambition, but the effort that arises from the genuine desire to express the self, the most authentic part of who we are. When a person engages in something with soul, a project, an artwork, a gesture of compassion, they participate in life's own creative movement. Nietzsche called this amor fati, the love of fate, the ability to say yes to everything that happens, including pain. Depth psychology recognizes in this love a form of integration. The ego, once obsessed with control and avoidance of discomfort, begins to understand that meaning is not found outside, but woven from lived experience. Even frustration becomes raw material for inner construction. Suffering, when consciously embraced, transforms into wisdom. Neuroscience supports this view. Studies on resilience show that intentional effort activates brain circuits related to learning and lasting satisfaction. Deep pleasure doesn't come from ease, but from overcoming. The human brain is designed to grow through challenge, not despite it. Each time we surpass an internal limit, a new synapse forms, and with it, a new perception of ourselves. Philosophy and psychology, therefore, converge on an ancient truth. There is no meaning without crossing, and no creation without effort. The comfortable path may offer rest, but it is creative discomfort that gives life. The self blooms in tension, imbalance, and the search for coherence between what we feel and what we manifest. It is in that fertile ground, between pain and revelation, that the human becomes divine. Chapter 6. Practices to reconnect effort and meaning. Understanding is the first step, but living it is the real challenge. To reconnect effort and meaning is, above all, an act of presence. It's not about seeking pain, but welcoming discomfort as part of growth. Below are some simple but transformative practices to bring this teaching into daily life. 1. The Journey Journal, conscious journaling. Set aside a few minutes each day to record small frustrations, challenges, and lessons. Ask yourself, what is this difficulty trying to teach me? Writing transforms inner chaos into language, and language into consciousness. It is the symbolic way of giving voice to the unconscious and understanding what the self is trying to express through discomfort. 2. Meditation on effort. Sit in silence and bring to mind a situation that requires persistence. Observe your inner resistances, impatience, fear, fatigue. Instead of fighting them, just breathe and let them be. The practice reveals that effort is not the enemy of peace. It is the bridge that leads to it. 3. The exercise of conscious choice. In daily life, notice how often you choose the easier path just to avoid discomfort. Experiment with deliberately choosing the path that requires presence. Talk to the person you avoid, finish what you started, face a fear. Each conscious choice reprograms the brain to associate effort with expansion, not punishment. 4. Re-educate pleasure. Seek pleasures that carry meaning. Cooking, creating, walking in nature, learning something new. These experiences activate the reward system in a healthy way and restore dopamine's original function to motivate growth, not escape. 5. Small rituals of purpose. Before sleeping, give thanks for what was difficult. The simple act of acknowledging the value of discomfort strengthens both mind and heart. Over time, you'll see that frustration stops being an enemy and becomes an ally. These practices are bridges between ego and self. They remind us that meaning is not about eliminating effort, but sanctifying it. When every act of life becomes conscious, even fatigue acquires beauty, and what once seemed struggle reveals itself as prayer in motion. Conclusion: the return to meaning. At the end of every journey, what we truly seek is not comfort, but meaning. The human soul is not nourished by pleasure alone, but by purpose. And what we call discomfort is often the self's silent call, asking us to awaken from the anesthesia of habit and remember who we are. Carl Jung said that life has a natural tendency toward individuation, a movement toward wholeness. But that path requires courage, the courage to let go of control and allow the unknown to shape us. A comfortable life may seem safe, but it is the friction with reality that makes us alive. Effort, frustration, failure, all are disguised teachers, forging meaning within us. Perhaps true comfort, after all, is the one born of coherence, when what we think, feel, and do are aligned with inner truth. That is where the soul finds rest, not because everything is easy, but because everything is whole. If this reflection touched something in you, share in the comments. In what part of your life has comfort become a prison? Your awakening might inspire others to cross their own desert and rediscover the sacred meaning of being alive.